Enshrouded is absurdly ambitious, and we don't deserve it. Well, I mean, we do, but it made for a really catchy title, so that's what I went with. Look, there's been so many great games that have come out in 2024 already that, well, it's been stealing away my attention and making it rather difficult for me to get back to making an overview or review for Enshrouded, like I am today. However, with their recent patch, and a massive one at that, it made for a really good opportunity for me to make more people aware of this game and how special it is. More special than I think a lot of people realize. This game is displaying much of the exact same ambition and ethic that I saw from Larian Studios during their early access leading up to the release of Baldur's Gate 3. And if this game continues on this path, we have a monster of a game headed our way. They're adding instanced dungeons into the game, like it's an MMO. What even is this game? If you haven't played it, Enshrouded is an action-adventure survival buildcraft RPG currently in early access, developed and published by Keen Games. The game offers a blend of survival, crafting, and action RPG combat set within a sprawling, voxel-based world. We navigate through the open world environments, ranging from hills, mountains, forests, caves, and the foreboding Shroud. As we travel this sprawling world, we seek to restore the power of the ancient flame and uncover the story that unfolds beneath the surface. Now, unfortunately for Enshrouded, the game released into early access right alongside Palworld, and as both games dwell within a similar genre, Enshrouded took the back seat, while Palworld became one of the fastest-selling games in Steam history, as well as one of the most played third-party titles in Xbox history. You could say it was enshrouded by the shadow of Palworld's success. I'm sorry for saying that. Regardless, Enshrouded on release found immediate success, not to the level of Palworld, but it speaks volumes about the game and the competition it was up against, selling over 1 million copies and reaching 160k concurrent players on Steam. Enshrouded isn't your standard survival game, and one of the reasons for its success is how it leans on RPG elements, something for me that has been long overlooked in this genre. I love buildcraft games. I love exploring worlds, gathering materials, building a base, progressing through different tiers of materials, as it facilitates my ability to explore that world even further and unlock more content. However, there is one thing that I've always felt a lot of these survival games are missing, and it's that personal expression of your character, and not just your personal expression over the world by just building things. By leveraging a skill tree, a class system, and randomized loot similar to Diablo, I now have the ability to chase a power fantasy as a character and synergize with my friends while I'm playing in multiplayer. Get a group of 4 people together, and you can have a mage, cleric, ranger, and warrior. You can even split those trees and become hybridized classes, adding even more flexibility to the party and making the game feel that much more dynamic. I think what I appreciate most about my time spent playing Enshrouded is that while it is like other survival games, it's very playable solo, the game feels entirely different when you're playing it with others. Valheim, V Rising, Minecraft, Grounded, all of these are excellent games to play solo or with friends, but we are all eventually starting to look the exact same and playing the exact same over time. The dynamic of the gameplay doesn't really shift when you start adding more people, other than generating more resources faster, spending more resources faster, and building more stuff. Adding more players in Enshrouded allows you to feel like you're genuinely coordinating with your friends, taking up different classes, utilizing different resources, wearing different gear, exploring into areas further at a lower level because you have that kind of flexibility when you're playing with other players. And you also have the ability to take on some of the bosses a lot earlier than you would otherwise. Now, when I first started playing Enshrouded, it felt like any other build-craft survival game that I'd played in the past, which, by the way, isn't a problem because I love that kind of genre of game. But with that said, outside of the things that made it feel a little bit different, it relatively felt the same. And those things that made it feel different were like the Shroud, which is kind of this timed, poisonous area that you can only stay and explore in for so long before you need to leave, or find a shrine to be able to recharge your protection. It has bosses and randomized loot. It has classes and arguably one of the best building systems in any of these kind of games, period. I haven't seen many others do anything better. And it wasn't until I started playing with a friend of mine that all of a sudden that dynamic shifted entirely. Started playing the game entirely different, because normally when I play a lot of these survival games, usually we all kind of split up. You know, we go do our own thing. We go to build our own base or whatever it might be, and then, you know, congregate at another point to go do something specifically together. But when playing Enshrouded, we were connected at the hip. He was playing a ranger. I'm playing as a spell sword. healing us, throwing out fireballs, jumping in, doing melee, keeping enemies away from him while he's firing arrows. And it made for some really dynamic gameplay that I'm not really used to from games like this. And it's something that I really appreciate about the game. And I'll be honest with you, after a while of playing the game and being kind of lost in combat for a while, I almost forgot that I was even playing a buildcraft game to begin with. And after seeing what they're planning on doing with their early access and what they've already done to the game so far, I'm wondering what this game is going to be. Now, I will say that early access does have its pitfalls, and I will always recommend to my viewers to do your research and really believe in a product before you invest your money into it, because it's something that may never be fully realized. I've had great early access experiences, like the 3 years that I spent playing Baldur's Gate 3 before its release. Balatro has me absolutely hooked right now. Core Keepers has been fantastic. Death Must Die, V Rising, and the list goes on. I've equally been burned by early access games in the past, like Diablo 4 and Starfield. However, I wasn't expecting just how full of an experience Enshrouded was set to deliver upon its release. Sure, the game does have some rough edges, some things that I would like to see changed. However, the map is huge, the environments are varied, the options available for building, decorating, gearing, and customizing are something like I haven't seen in early access before. Players will have no issue dropping a couple hundred hours into this game if they aren't solely focused on combat progression alone. From my perspective, after playing the game for roughly 50 hours, they could easily just smooth out the corners, add a couple bosses, and call it a day, but that's not the goal of this studio. In all of the interviews with the staff from Larian Studios following the success of Baldur's Gate 3, they attributed their success to two things more than anything else. They did their research and knew what the players wanted, and they leveraged the community feedback in early access to deliver on that experience. Keen Games is emulating that exact same philosophy with Enshrouded, but to an absurd level. I had assumed that their first major patch would most likely be something cosmetic, maybe fixing some performance issues, maybe even unlocking another explorable area. No, the first patch was a total haymaker. With its first patch dubbed Hollow Halls, they added a dungeon to each biome with enemies that correspond to the level of that area, rewarding players with new loot, new materials, a new crafting station, a new NPC, new quests, and more. All of these new materials mean that there's new crafting recipes for every single vendor, new furniture, new weapons, new armor, new blocks, and the list goes on. In the 2 months since the release of the game on January 24th until the recording of this video, Keen Games has balanced the game, increased performance, added matchmaking, added a ton of quality of life, new explorable areas, new bosses, new items, and more. Most, if not all of the content that is being added is coming from player suggestions and player voting. Oh, and by the way, that's not all. Alongside the game's recent update, they posted a roadmap for more content that's going to be headed our way this year, including our ability to be able to share bases so you can copy base designs from other people if you're not a builder yourself, world events, instance dungeons like Diablo 4 and MMOs, more biomes to explore, and also water. Wait, I'm just now realizing the game doesn't have any water. Now, to say that I am surprised by the level of effort that they put in and the amount of content they put into the game would be a lie, because I'm absolutely floored. The amount of ambition behind what they're doing over there at Keen Games is ridiculous. But I think people fail to realize that this is exactly what you need to do to be able to make a successful game when you do not have the resources to get to the finish line. You have to go into early access, you have to listen to the players, you have to incorporate their feedback into the game, and then grow the game off of that feedback. And that's exactly what they're doing with Enshrouded. And something that is, so frustrating for me lately is listening to these industry heads talk about how there's a concerning lack of growth within the industry, and that's the reason why they have to lay off, or the further commoditization of video games, or have to increase prices, or why games aren't finished entirely when they have to come out. Things like that. But when I look around, I see there is no issue with growth in the industry. The growth just isn't on their side. Larian Studios and Baldur's Gate 3, Arrowhead Studios and Helldivers 2, Iron Gate and Last Epoch, Keen Games and Enshrouded. All of these companies are doing just fine, and the reason why is because they have the agility, the flexibility, and more importantly, the empathy to understand what the players want and how to make a game that players actually want to play. And with what we're seeing from Keen Games already and Enshrouded, you love to see it, but more than anything, I'm just wondering what they're going to be able to pull off next. Enshrouded is a game that is brimming with so much potential, and so much of it is already realized. The game is already beautiful, the world is vibrant, the sections of the map that are caught in the shroud offer this non-intrusive linearity to an open world game that really helps the player focus on exploring specific sections of the map before moving on to the next. Class builds offer unique depth for the moment-to-moment gameplay and a whole other layer of character progression that is otherwise non-existent in many other open world crafting games. Bosses, dungeons, and quests provide a familiar loop for me to be able to explore their world and focus on ways to be able to create challenges and goals for myself, rather than just looking for the next tier of material to upgrade my crafting stations and equipment. While much of what makes a build craft game is here in Enshrouded, the game doesn't simply just copy what's already been done, they're innovating on it. Now, I don't want to blow the game out of proportion. It has its fair share of issues, and there are things that I would like to see changed with the game. While Enshrouded does deliver on a great deal, it doesn't deliver on all of those things flawlessly. Enshrouded has hands down one of the best building systems in all of buildcraft games. The variety of bases and the creativity players are able to express in the game is unlike anything I've ever seen before. With that said, the inventory system for building isn't as straightforward or as easily approachable as we've seen in other games. If you want tables, windows, crafting tables, processing stations, doors, chairs, or decorations, well, you have to build those through a vendor first, put them in your inventory, then put them on your hotbar, and then place them on the ground, rather than just selecting them from a crafting wheel and being done with it. In order to build, you can't use raw materials. Instead, you have to craft with building blocks. Then you have to craft roof pieces completely separately, when you have them in your personal inventory, and then you can place them down using the hammer. Personally, I feel like this system would be massively improved if decorations, furniture, crafting stations, walls, and roofs were all craftable and placeable from the same menu, rather than having to take all of these unnecessary steps that otherwise worsen the experience. Randomized gear and equipment is a great addition to a buildcraft game, however, it lacks the depth to make it interesting as much as it probably should be. Items that drop have rarities, added bonuses, and can be upgraded. However, all of the items that drop are the exact same. You'll find the exact same item with varying rarities, however, it's just the exact same item with increased base damage, the exact same substats, but one more available upgrade slot. You'll also often find a lot of weapons, but you rarely find any gear, and the substats aren't interesting enough for you to be excited about this. And this is a major issue for me because they're planning on adding instance dungeons. However, without interesting loot to get from those dungeons, I'm not really understanding why they would be useful. Bosses are a great way to be able to create goals or gear checks for players. They offer a challenge, a chase to become strong enough to be able to fight them, and a fun experience to be able to coordinate and take them down with friends. However, in my experience, fighting the Wisp Wyvern as an example, as well as many of the other Shroud bosses, enemy tells aren't very clearly telegraphed. The boss mechanics are simplistic, and at the exact same time, they deal more than half of your health and damage. What ends up happening is that I find these moments where I would get hit by a boss, not because the fight was difficult, but because the fight took too long, and often the fight became too repetitive to be able to retain my attention. Now, while on the topic of combat, I really don't know how to describe this properly, but the rhythm of enemy attacks and the speed of enemies just feels off. And maybe it's even the speed of the character. When enemies attack, they attack when you don't expect them to. They're more faster or slower than you would expect them to be. And overall, it just made combat feel unnatural and unintuitive. I play a lot of action RPGs. Hell, it's one of the main focuses of this channel. There is a level of intuition that you build up from playing a ton of games like this, and it doesn't really seem applicable in this game the way that it should be. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, didn't you say that you love the bosses, the building, the classes, and all of these other things? And yes, I do. I do love all of those things. However, they do have issues, but these issues are more nagging issues than anything else, and it's nothing that would ruin your overall experience while you're playing the game. However, they are issues, and for those who haven't purchased the game, they deserve to have that kind of context before investing in it. With that said, this is a game that I support, and it's also a game that I think I want other people to support as well, because there's something really special that's going on here, and it's something that I want to make more people aware of, because these are the kind of companies that we want to succeed in the industry, because that's how we get better games as a result. People that are actually listening to players, the people that are actually making games that players actually want to play, those are the guys that we want on top of the industry, not the jokers that are up there right now. And with the issues that I do have with the game, I am not concerned whatsoever because of how rapidly they've been changing this game, how much content they've been putting into the game, I can't imagine that my concerns would be concerns for very long, because they are listening to player feedback. They are watching videos. I've seen them like reposting people's videos that only have like 200 or 300 views of just their builds and stuff like that. And you love to see that kind of community feedback. You love to see that kind of engagement coming from a studio. And that's something that I want to see more of out there more than anything else. And I want a studio that's appreciative. Appreciative? I want a studio that appreciates the players. And I want to appreciate them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know that I liked making it. This is a video that I was looking forward to making. It just took a really long time to be able to make it because there were so many games that came out in rapid succession that I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were. And obviously I had to cover those as well. Grand Blue Fantasy, sweetheart, I'm on my way. Don't worry. Soon. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this video, think about subscribing to the channel, liking the video, dropping a comment down below. More than anything, try to catch me live on Twitch. I go live 4 days a week, or at least I try. 2 days I try to make videos. The other 4 I stream, and 1 day I take off to chill. My life is yours. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, and most of all, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Family, 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 family.